So let's get started, everybody. I'm Ruth Stevens, and along with my brother Peter, we are so pleased and proud to welcome you to this session today, where our brother Phil will be speaking about his experiences in Africa. And just to give you some housekeeping instructions, first of all, I'm going to mute all of you and just ask Phil to unmute himself when he's ready to talk, okay? And this session is being recorded, so if you object to that, please do something. I don't know, drop out or whatever. And I also wanted to explain that Phil is going to talk for about 40 minutes, and during his talk, he's planning to take some pauses and ask you to pose any questions that have occurred to you. And at that point, we'll run a small Q&A and invite you to unmute yourself and ask your question directly to Phil. And we'll do that again at the end of his talk until 5 o'clock, when we'll end promptly. So I'm going to ask Peter to make an introduction of Phil. And before I do that, I just wanted to show you that I have a picture of the book that Phil will be talking about, among other things, today. And I just wanted to give you a preview of what a cutie Phil was in 1974 with one of the stone statues that he'll be explaining to us about today. So with that, over to you, Peter, for an introduction, please.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I am Peter. Nice to see so many folks here today, including so many of my siblings. It's great. And some other old friends and some people I don't know. This is sort of personal for me because back in 1965, I visited Phil in Nigeria, and we spent, I can't remember how long, out at this site that we're going to be learning about some more about today. And I've certainly, from afar, been part of Phil's experience over all these years. Little background on him. My older brother, the oldest of our clan, Phil graduated from Yale in 1963. He went to Nigeria with the Peace Corps to teach English in a progressive co-ed Muslim secondary school. During school vacations, he worked for the Federal Department of Antiquities in Nigeria. And when they assigned him to the SAA project in 1965, he extended his tour and he worked with them full time. From 66 to 73, he worked on his doctorate at Northwestern University and was hired by the University of Buffalo, where he has been ever since until he retired a year or so ago. He returned to SAA in 1974 and 1976. His book was published in 78. And in 2012, he was conferred with an honorary chieftaincy title by the ruler of SAA. He's going to tell us about this large collection of stone carvings of unknown origin, age, and purpose, which he has come to regard as Africa's greatest mystery. Phil, take it away.
Thank you. And I am presenting this today in honor of our dear sister, and I've given you her web address. She is a remarkable woman in the field of direct marketing. She speaks Greek, and I don't understand Greek, but I'm told that that she is really respected in that field. And thanks to Peter also for his introduction. So I first put this type of a presentation together in 2014 when I was a guest speaker at the Georgia Southwestern State University in Americus, Georgia, where a longtime friend of mine was the president, and he invited me to be the keynote speaker in a series on Africa. And it occurred to me that for most people throughout the Western world, Africa has had a bum rap for many centuries, the dark continent, and you know all the rest. But in fact, there is evidence of highly skilled, highly developed, highly centralized and stratified civilizations in tropical Africa below the Sahara from at least 1500 years before the Common Era. I have put together a list of the principal complexes of highly skilled art, sculptures of various sorts, from which we can conclude some data about the societies that produce them. A full-time artist is not a basically fundamentally productive member of society. He has to be supported. And in order to support full-time specialists, you need a system of specialization, you need a system of stratification, and presumably centralized authority systems in order to support full-time artisans. We know the processes by which these complexes were produced. They require a high level of skill, presumably long training, perhaps apprenticeships. They require high level of technology. And in order to support all that, you've got to have a pretty well-developed and specialized society. Now, I have representative slides of all of these at the end of my SCA presentation. And if any of you want to look at them, if we have time, we can. They are arranged from the oldest to the more recent. The oldest is Knock, and there's a comprehensive book published about Knock by a German archaeologist named Peter Breunig just a few years ago. You can find it. And associated with Knock are two other complexes, Katsina and Sokoto. The largest collection of those terracotta figures are at Yale, and they're published. You can look these up online. These are terracotta complexes, highly developed terracotta art, hollow. Some of them seem to be portraits. Some of them are stylized and apparently symbolic of some status. You can have a look at them. Ife is best known for its brass cast by the lost wax process. They produced many brass items, which are well known around the world. Ife was the spiritual center of the Yoruba kingdoms, and the brass technology is possibly as old as 1200 of the modern era. Benin also brass. Hundreds of items were collected and taken away to London, to the British Museum by the so-called British Punitive Expedition of 1897, and they are housed in the British Museum in London today. Of course, Nigeria would like to have them back. Many of them are highly skilled, all produced by the lost wax method. Tada and Jebba are, Tada is an island and Jebba is a little village way up on the Niger River. They are the sites of some large, very large brass castings, which were presumably left there, and they're very mysterious. They resemble the Ife style. The so-called Lower Niger bronze industry is way down in Nigeria. I'll show you a map in a moment, and you can look this up too. You'll find many examples of brass technology from that complex, covering many square miles. Several villages seem to have been part of it. Ecom is the name of a village which was the first place where stone monoliths were discovered in the Delta area of Nigeria. All of these are in modern Nigeria. That's interesting. And Alwa is the most recent. This was also a kingdom, and they produced terracotta as well as some brass. So I'm going to talk about my work with the Stone Images of Esie, is the way that name is pronounced. This is a map, a modern map of Africa, and Nigeria is right here. And all of those names that I have just listed are in modern day Nigeria. In 1912, the German explorer and anthropologist Leo Frobenius brought this head back to Europe. He gave a location where he had, quote, collected it and as the somewhere near Offa, O-F-F-A. Offa was not on maps of Africa in those days, but in fact, it is a town very near Esie, 1912. This is a map showing the locations of places that I've just named and the location on the continent. Esie is right here. This is about 150 to 200 miles as the crow flies from the coast. All of this is Yoruba country today. Benin is down here. They are of the Edo people, and the lower Niger is down here. Today, they are Igbo people, but we don't know who it was that produced the brass figures of the lower Niger. And Ikom in the Cross River area is right here, where the stone monoliths are. 1933, a school teacher heard about this collection of stone carvings in a sacred grove near the Yoruba village of Esie. This picture is the earliest we have of this collection, taken in 1933, their first exposure to the outside world. This man is the chief priest of the cult of the images, a group of people designated to revere and to offer sacrifices to the images on behalf of individuals, as well as to conduct an annual festival, which takes place at the end of the dry season, just before the rain. He is standing, speaking to the figure known as the king, which is right here. The images were arranged in a rough semicircle with a clearing in the center. And this image is larger than most of the others, and it was at the arc of the semicircle, and so they presumed this was the king. Before we go any further, it's clear that the people of Esie did not create these figures. During the 19th century, from about 1835 to to the end of the century, there was a lot of migration in the area, a lot of intertribal warfare, and large groups of people migrated and came back and forth. And it's presumed that the ancestors of the current inhabitants of Esie came upon these images that had been left there, presumably by people who were going to come back for them. They were not produced in this spot. It took a lot of stone to make them, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. The Esie people developed a series of legends about them and a cult to revere them. This is a close-up of the king after a sacrifice had been offered to him, probably chicken or goat. Some other pictures of the images as they were discovered in the early 1930s. Between 1933 and 1935, we have these pictures of them. In 1945, a shelter was built to house them because they were being damaged. They're all made of soapstone, which is soft and easily broken, easily gouged. This was an octagonal building, open in the center, with roof around its 8 walls and several levels. Most of the figures are seated on stools, and bases of stools, which are the least valuable and the least diagnostic of the items, were put at the bottom to keep visitors back. And partial figures were put on the next level. Full figures were put way up and back where people could not reach them to touch them. A lot of heads were broken off their bodies, and their loose heads were put on a high level, as you can see. And so they were left. The building had one door, one key, which was kept with the chief of the village, which is about 1.5 miles across the savannah. Visitors would go to the chief's palace, give him a gift. He would send a small boy with the key, and visitors would come in and have free rein to view the images. A number of images were damaged, and untold numbers were stolen. As Peter said, in 1965, I was working for the Antiquities department, and during school breaks, and the director of Antiquities asked me if I would work at Esie. No one had done a catalog, no one had done any systematic photography. And in January, the dry season of 1965, I started that work. I moved up to Esie. For several weeks, I lived in this building. I had a folding cot and mattress and a cook stove I had my little Volkswagen. In the center of the open space, which is in this picture, it's off to the right, there was a shelter was built for presumably for work. Some early colonial people apparently had tried to do some repairs, but very sporadic and actually very poor. But they built a shelter, and I put my camp under that shelter, and I stayed there for some weeks, beginning the assessing what to do with this collection. How do we make sense of it? And during that time, I heard I would wake up from not wake up, I would be startled from whatever I was doing, examining figures or something, by a figure toppling over. The wall is crumbling after 20 years. And on a few occasions, a figure actually fell over and broke. And I told the Antiquities department, they were a department of the Ministry of Education, about this. Really, the images are not safe here. They've got to be protected. And as I started doing the catalog, plans were drawn up to build a new museum complex to provide the security that they need. I'm going to move along and give you some other shots of the interior of the old House of Images, where Peter may remember this. He came to visit me while I was working there. And I said I spent a couple of weeks living there. That was not a good idea. The people of the village had suspicions about me. How could I spend a night there? And I must have some supernatural powers. Otherwise, I could not keep my sanity being here with all of these beings. The images were associated with supernatural powers. And so I moved into the town and took a room there. And I worked at Esie for the next year and a half. From time to time, I was sent to other places to do other jobs, but this was my my focus. Most of them are full figures. There are a few odd heads like this one, which were complete as heads. And this one is unique. It doesn't look like any of the others. It looks rather like a Benin style. In March of 1965, the women of the cult conducted the annual festival, and that's what's going on here. The priestess is up at the altar making an offering to the king. Some women who are with her are bowing to the king. The priestess asks the king some questions, presenting requests on behalf of others. And for each question, she has a 4-valved kola nut, which she casts on the level here in front of the king. She interprets the king's response by the way the kola nuts fall. This is a very common method of divination across Africa. And they have killed a goat and poured his blood over the king. The king is shining with a new coat of sacrificial blood. Here's another view, and you see some of the other images. Here's a couple of the smallest ones. You can get an idea of their size. We have begun to move some of the images out for numbering and photography, and you can get a clearer picture of the king. In the new museum complex that we built over the next year, a separate altar was built for him and a few figures that the people designated as attendants. Here's another of those very few, I think only 4 or 5 heads that were never parts of bodies. They were designed as heads only. I'm going to give you some of representative pictures of images at the old House of Images. The next series, this is before any repairs had been effected, before we had developed a numbering system and a cataloging system. Many of the images are female, and many of the females are armed, holding a sword or a machete over the right shoulder. There are legends of armed females in so-called Amazons in West Africa, but it's hard to pinpoint them. The ancient kingdom of Dahomey in the nation which is now called the People's Republic of Benin, no relation to the city of Benin. The stories are that the king of Dahomey had a troop of female warriors, and it's been speculated that the female warriors at Esie are inspired by those, but no way to be certain. Here's another one. A man, most of the arms and hands have been broken. He has a sheath under his left hip, and his hand may have been holding a dagger. This one is probably a blacksmith. He is holding what looks like a hammer in his right hand and what looks like a piece of metal in his left hand. Around his middle, he has some kind of a sash. We can't identify it, but around his left arm, he has medicines. These are tiny calabashes, tiny gourds, which contain magical medicines, and people wear them on their bodies for protection. They're amulets. This one had received some repairs, as you can see. I would not have tried to repair the figure this way because now it's impossible to find the base for it. All of them had bases. Most of them are seated on stools. A few are standing, but they all have circular bases. And whoever tried to repair this one has made it impossible to attach it to a base. This hairstyle is interesting. Hair like that is found in northern regions of Nigeria and the nation of Niger and Mali, some of the desert areas. This is the largest of the images before repairs. My first attempt at photography was done against a woven grass mat, which was okay for the documentation that the museum wanted, but it was not okay for publication. I'll get to that shortly. I erected a plank, and after we had established a system of organizing the complete figures, the headless torsos, and the heads. These are the three major categories. And we had organized them by various stylistic features. Then we took pictures of them like this, and affected what repairs we could. I'll talk about that in a minute also. But for publication, this is not satisfactory because the background is just too grainy and too, it's not distinct enough from the subject. The Department of Antiquities hired this man who's an architect from Poland. He had been doing some work in the southern areas, and they sent him up to Esie to plan the layout for the new museum. This is the entrance of the old House of Images. He and I are taking some preliminary measurements. Some of the roof was taken off for use in the new storehouses, and you get a good idea of what the interior of the old House of Images looked like. Here are the headless torsos laid on their fronts for numbering. We numbered each one and took photos of each one. In the meantime, the new museum complex is being built in a solid style on a concrete platform with mud walls, very thick mud walls, which will have a good roof coverage. This is going to be the exhibition gallery. You see the shelving that was being built here, and up against the walls, the roof will have a translucent plastic covering so that light can shine in. These are open in the impluvial style with a drainage in the center. I went back to graduate school, as Peter said, in 1966. By that time, the plans were being developed for a major festival of arts to be held in Nigeria. The first one was held in Dakar in the late 1960s. The second one was going to be held in Nigeria. And all of a sudden, there was a lot of money for the festival, which was originally planned for 1974. It had to be postponed. And I was advised that the Antiquities Department wanted to publish the catalogue for the Festival of Arts. And so in 1974, 73 and 74, I came back spent 2 or 3 months on 2 separate trips in the 1970s to take better pictures, to do some research, to do some comparative ethnographic investigations, to try to track down similar features like facial scarifications and hairstyles and head styles, stool styles, dress styles, which are found around the area within 100 or within 200 miles of Esie. Everything that is represented in the stone images is available among living populations. I took this picture when I returned in '73. This is the finished museum complex. This is the exhibition hall. This is a storeroom, and this is to be a workshop. The roofs were made of corrugated tin and covered with thatch, and they look very nice when the thatch is replaced. You can see here that it needs new thatching. And these pictures were taken at that time. This is the exhibition hall as we had set it up in 1966 before I left. And this is the view that visitors get when they enter. There's the picture that Ruth was showing you. This is the largest of the images. We were able to find some of his parts because he is so big. And we repaired them as we repaired others. There were lots and lots of unidentifiable fragments, and we crushed some of these fragments. We pulverized them and mixed them with a special brand of epoxy resin, which was shipped to us by the, I forgot the name of the chemical company in Basel, Switzerland, who manufactured, I'm blanking on the name of it. And we mixed the pulverized stone with the epoxy and made repairs with that compound, and it worked very well. This is another view of the exhibition hall in the early 1970s, and you see how we had done it. Visitors are kept back by this railing. The loose heads that we couldn't find bodies for are on this shelf, and complete figures on the upper shelves. And here is a range. Here's one of the larger ones, and here are some of the smaller ones. This one is a naked pregnant woman kneeling. She's one of the very few that is not sitting on a stool. These are the smallest of the figures. These are 2 pots, as if they were made of terracotta, pots carved out of stone, presumably to represent offerings or possibly water. There are a few animals. Some of the images are apparently eating, some are apparently laughing, several are playing musical instruments. This is the altar that we built so that the people could continue their festivals. The king and some of the figures that they selected to go with him are on the altar. These are some views of the storeroom, full figures and incomplete figures up along the walls, and along the inside on makeshift shelving are fragments of arms and other body parts. It's an incredible collection. Here are some wood carvings that came from another village that were just left here for storage. These are all boxes of arm fragments, hand fragments. A number of them are holding weapons like bows and arrows, and they have broken, and the pieces of weaponry that are diagnosable as weaponry are in some of these boxes. And I took a whole new set of pictures for the book, several thousand pictures. We got a black backdrop from the museum The Department of Antiquities provided me with a car and driver and anything I needed for those two visits in 73 and 74. And here I am taking, re-photographing the images for publication. Here is one of the finer ones with a new background for publication. Here is the same one. This one was one of a couple that were taken to the main museum in Lagos. Lagos then was the capital of Nigeria. The National Museum is in Lagos. And here's a picture of it from the museum catalog. You can see he's holding an elaborate dagger in its sheath. And here's this bulbous hairstyle again, which is found in some northern tribes. You may remember this one. We were able to repair him. He had a big gash where his head had been reattached to his neck, and we filled it in, and it looks pretty good. And here are some other pictures of some of the torsos. I promised you I would stop and take some questions, and maybe I better do that now. I've been talking. Does anyone have a question you'd like to ask right now?
Excuse me, this is Mary Alice. I have a question. I sent a chat.
Speak a little louder, please.
I sent a chat.
Yes, but I can't see the chat. Hello? Chats.
So
Speak.
it sounds like Mary Alice's mic is not very good. So let me read the question that she put in the chat. How did the people respond to moving images and statues around, Phil?
Oh, good question. In fact, they were delighted. They have known that the images are breaking, and they were very unhappy about that. And they were very glad that we were building a new museum complex. In that picture you saw, I have several pictures of the images being laid out for numbering. And they were taken out for the first time in 20 years. They were taken out and exposed to direct sunlight. Prior to that, they had been under the shelter. And the people pointed out that after we had laid out all the images in the dry season of 1965, there was no more rain until the images were all put away inside again. That was interesting. And they gave me a name. They gave me a couple of names, Erefemi, which means in Yoruba, the images love me. But one that stuck is Erewumi, which means the images and I get along together. We are simpatico. And that name stuck, and that's the name they chose to make into a chieftaincy title for me in 2012. I hope that answers the question. Is that all right? Are there any other questions in the chat box, Ruth?
No, but we only have 20 minutes left, Phil, so maybe you should
All right, I'll
press
move
on.
along. I'll move along. Another one holding a machete on her lap. This gesture is found on several of the images. Is it submission? Is it salute? What is it? And the umbilical hernia, which is common among children, but not common among adults. When an adult's umbilicus doesn't close completely and he or she keeps a hernia into adulthood, it is regarded by the people as a mark of distinction, a mark of supernatural distinction. And maybe that's what's going on here. This is the cover of the book that was published not in 76, which was the original plan, but 1978. You can find it online. There are still copies available. You can have one for as little as $10. Around 20 is now standard. And it's 400 pages long with several thousand photographs and my narrative, 100 pages of text, which gives my reconstruction of what I think happened, where they came from, and what research needs to be done. I am proposing in my book, and ever since then, that the images came from here, Old Oyo, right near the Niger River. Old Oyo is the capital of the Oyo Empire, which was really powerful, and it was visited by some European explorers in the early 19th century. The king of Oyo was a very powerful king. These are kingdoms. The Yoruba are known for kingdoms, which are hierarchical and centralized political structures. In 1837, Oyo was sacked by invading Muslim Fulani from the north in one of a series of invasions which have been called jihads. It's not clear whether they really were in the proper sense of the word. And we know that there is that kind of stone in the area. I investigated through the Geological Survey of Nigeria the locations of soapstone in apparently sufficient quantity to produce a collection of about 1,000 figures as big as this one. I'm suggesting that these images had important meaning to the people. They are very portable. The people fled with the images and dropped them just outside of Esie with a plan to return. That's my suggestion. It's very simple. The way to prove it or disprove it is to complete some archaeology at Old Oyo. That's very desolate, and in modern times, it's dangerous. There's a lot of lawlessness in Nigeria today, a lot of skirmishes between farmers and herders, which has been going on for decades, indeed for centuries, as far back as Cain and Abel, as you know. And those are principal reasons why no more archaeology has been done there. But somewhere, as I say in my book, there's a great hole in the ground. Somewhere there's a quarry. Somewhere there was a workshop. There must have been some errors. Where are those production areas? I think they are going to be found in here. In 2012, the present ruler of Esie, this man, came to Baltimore to visit his daughter, who still lives in Baltimore, and he was preparing to celebrate the 25th anniversary of his rule in the fall of 2012. And he wanted to confer upon me a chieftaincy title at that time. And so I flew to Baltimore. Here we are at the Baltimore waterfront. You may have been there. And we chatted about it. And in early December of 2012, I went to Nigeria. I had my classes covered for 8 or 10 days. This is the village of Esie as it looked then, 2012, on a Sunday afternoon. The two largest buildings in the town are the Cathedral Church of St. Michael, right here, the Anglican Cathedral, and the mosque. And Esie is about half Christian and half Muslim, and they get along very well. Esie is a model of Christian-Muslim relations, I would say. In other parts of West Africa, there have been violence between the two. This is the chief's palace, the entrance to the chief's palace. And this is what the museum complex looks like today. 3 more buildings were built. This is the exhibition hall. This is the altar where the king is. And this is a new exhibition hall here to display art from other parts of the country. There are at least a dozen museums around Nigeria, each one focusing on the art of that particular area and representations of representative pieces of art from other parts of the country. This is the curator's office and workshop area. And this is the original site of the shrine. These trees are Dracaena, are grown from the original trees that protected the images when they were discovered to the outside world. The king's celebration he's held for himself took place over 3 or 4 days. And on the day of conferral, he is going to give out 25 chieftaincy titles, one for each year of his rule. He's been very successful. The work we did helped in that success. The book that I published and the museum complex that we put together helped to put Esie on the map. And so a grand celebration, 700, 800 people invited, and they're all going to be fed an elaborate meal inside a big tent with white tablecloths. Here I am with the village. He is called the king by modern people. He's not traditionally a Yoruba king, but we'll call him that. And this is one of 2 suits of clothes that friends of mine put together for me. This is before the ceremony has begun. This is the ruler of a neighboring town, a police officer in the background. And when my name is called, I am escorted to the platform by members of the National Commission for Museums and Monuments. That is the modern name for the old Department of Antiquities. This woman is the curator at Esie. And I am seated in a chair in front of the king, and he crowns me with a beaded cap with my title, my new title embroidered on it, Erewumi. And this man, his name is Busari. He was one of my workers in the middle 1960s, and he is the one who named me. He is the one who gave me that nickname, Erewumi. The images and I get along well together. And that's the origin of the chieftaincy name that they conferred upon me. Along with it is a necklace, originally of coral. This one is plastic to look like coral. A bracelet, which you can't see. And these sacred leaves are called African laurel. Proper name is the African border tree, if you'd like to look it up, which are up under my cap. It has fallen out, and this fellow is reinserting it for me. And the next day, I was out in front of the hotel where I was staying, and I'm displaying the other suit of clothes that was made for me with another cap, and the bracelet and the necklace representing the old coral beads. And that is the end of my presentation on Esie, right about where I wanted to end it. As I told you, I have a set of slides of representative of the other mystery cultures, but because of the quantity and the absolute mystery of origins and original purpose associated with the Esie stones, I regard that collection as Africa's greatest mystery. Some of the stone carvings are really beautiful. I'm talking to you, I don't know if Ruth or Peter told you, I'm in Florida at our condominium, and I have only those slides that I had with me in digital files. I have a lot more pictures at home in Buffalo, including some pictures of the animals. Together with the stone images were found some terracotta pieces of human and animal forms. It's not certain that the terracotta and the stone are of the same age, but there's no reason to think that they were not. And I had some unidentifiable pieces of terracotta dated by thermoluminescence to the 15th and 16th century, roughly, which is fascinating and which puts the Esie collection into that realm of chronological mystery. Thank you all for your attention, for being with us today. I'm going to stop my screen share and open up the screen to everybody. I see we have 30 people here. There's two questions in it. Oh, the first one I've answered. How did the people respond to moving the images and statues around? And the second question, also from Mary Alice Groves, what are the tools in the hands? ... wooden. I don't know. What do you mean, Mary Alice?
She brought it up when you were showing the picture, the color picture of you being surrounded by people, and you were wearing the headdress with the green leaves by your ear, and there were some wooden staffs in the picture.
Those are drum beaters. Those are for beating the talking drums. Yoruba are known for the tension drum. Both drum heads are attached to each other with a series of strings of hide or whatever that go around the entire drum, and it is held under the arm. You squeeze your arm and it tightens the drum heads. You release your arm and it loosens them. A tighter drum head makes a higher pitched sound. A looser drum head makes a lower sound. The implement that you saw was a curved, hooked beater is pounded onto the drum. It's unique. I've seen it elsewhere in modern times, but earlier when I was first there, the Yoruba were the only people I could see that had that kind. There are other kinds of tension drums, but not exactly the same. Thank you for that question. I do have a video which is accompanied by the music the people were playing after the chief had crowned me. They led me back dancing, and we were all dancing to the rhythm of the drums, and there were some other musical instruments, and I have all that on video. I'm sorry I don't have it for you here today. I see another question. Did I try to estimate how long it might take to create one of the larger statues? And that is a very perceptive question, one that we indeed did ask. We made detailed notes on all conceivable features of the images to try to locate the origin of styles. We made notes on different styles of carving, which are distinguishable. We can see maybe 10 or as many as a dozen different carving styles, which may have been produced by different individuals or different schools of carvers. And we collected all of that data so that somebody who came along later might try to answer these kinds of questions. How long it took to produce one figure would, of course, depend on the complication of the figure itself and its size. It also depends on the state of the stone Does the carver go to the quarry? Is the quarry operated by one union of workers and carvers belong to another? How does the stone get from the quarry to the workshop? I mean, these are all questions that we just simply can't answer. But some of the images are very intricate. Lots of attention was paid to detail, and it took a long time. I'm sure that now soapstone is quite soft, and you can even carve it with your fingernail. So that was not an obstacle like carving from hard stone like granite or marble. But we did not consult with experts in sculpture, which someone can certainly do to try to get an answer for that question. Here's another one. You mentioned the hairstyles were reminiscent of more northern people. Actually, not all. Hairstyles and other features on the images are other features of the images are found in many different tribes, many different cultures, and I tried to visit as many as I could, and it's all in my book. The stools, some of the stools that the images are sitting on are found in different cultural areas. Some of the designs in the beadwork that are in necklaces around their necks, or bracelets, or in sashes around their waists. All of these have ethnographic parallels. And hairstyles, facial scarifications, and headdresses, caps, all have distinguishing features, which we have found elsewhere. And so at its height, the kingdom of Oyo in the early 19th century was very widespread. And a possible explanation is that this collection represents different elements of the kingdom. But more than that, I can't say now. Were there figures of children? We think so. There are some tiny figures that don't have adult features, and we think that they are children. But there's one very tiny figure of a woman who is clearly pregnant. She has large breasts and a distended, obviously pregnant belly. So size is not clearly diagnostic. Any folklore suggesting why they felt they had to worship the images? There's lots of folklore. The people of Esie had developed a number of myths of origin that many of them say that the images were people who came from a distant land, and for various reasons they were turned to stone by one or another god. But even after having been turned to stone, they can still run around and cause trouble. But if they are pacified and made happy, they can do wonderful things for the people of the town. There are many variations on these stories. Do I have any plans to store my photographs with an archive for future research? They are, in fact, in the possession of the National Museum in Nigeria, which was in Lagos. I presume it's still there. Let's see if there are any other questions.
We actually have to draw to a close, Phil. So how about if we all give him a virtual